The membrane surrounding each cell or organelle is a busy place. Like a well-used border crossing between two countries, raw materials enter and waste exit in a continuous flow of traffic. So how do membranes regulate this activity? A biological membrane or cell membrane is a phospholipid bilayer studded with proteins. This arrangement makes a membrane selectively permeable or choosy. That is, some substances pass freely through the bilayer, but others require help from proteins. This lecture describes three basic forms of traffic across the membrane. We have the passive transport, active transport, and transport using vesicles. Passive transport does not require energy input. In passive transport, a substance moves across a membrane without the direct expenditure of energy. All forms of passive transport involves diffusion. It is the spontaneous movement of molecules from a region where it is more concentrated to a region where it is less concentrated. Diffusion is the natural tendency for molecules to move constantly. So here is an example of diffusion. A drop of ink is placed in a glass of water. What have you observed? For a familiar example of diffusion, this picture shows what happens when you place a tea bag in a cup of hot water. Near the tea bag, there are many more brown tea molecules than elsewhere in the cup. Over time, however, the brownish color spreads to create a uniform brew. In a form of passive transport called as simple diffusion, a substance moves down its concentration gradient without the use of transport protein. Substances may enter or leave cells by simple diffusion only if they pass freely through the membrane. Lipids and small nonpolar molecules such as oxygen and carbon dioxide, for example, diffuse easily across a biological membrane. Two solutions of different concentrations may be separated by a selectively permeable membrane through which water, but not solutes, can pass. In that case, water will diffuse down its concentration gradient toward the side with a high solute concentration. Osmosis is the simple diffusion of water across a selectively permeable membrane. In understanding osmosis, we have to understand the varying conditions that a cell may be placed into. So therefore, we have to consider tonicity, wherein it is the ability of a solution to cause water movement. When we say isotonic, iso means equal. It is a condition in which solution concentration is the same on both sides of the semi-permeable membrane. Hypotonic, wherein hypo means under, describes a solution in which the solute concentration is less than on the other side of the semi-permeable membrane. Hypertonic, hyper means over, describes a solution in which the solution concentration is greater than on the other side of a semi-permeable membrane. A human red blood cell demonstrates the effects of osmosis. The cell's interior is normally isotonic to the surrounding blood plasma. Water enters and leaves the cell at the same rate, and the cell maintains its shape. Hypotonic environment, when the salt concentration of the plasma decreases, water flows into the cell faster than it leaves. The cell swells and may even burst. In hypertonic condition, wherein the salty surroundings, the cell loses water and shrinks or shrivels and may die for lack of water. In osmosis of plant cell, in isotonic condition, where it shows the normal cell, the cell is flaccid. In hypotonic condition, the interior of a plant cell usually contains a more concentrated solute than its surroundings. Water enters the cell by osmosis, generating turgor pressure. Turgor pressure helps keep plants erect. In hypertonic environment, the turgor pressure is low. Therefore, the plant wilts. Ions and polar molecules cannot freely pass or cross the hydrophobic layer of a membrane. Instead, transport proteins form channels that help these cross. Another form of passive transport is the facilitated diffusion. A membrane protein assists the movement of a polar solute along its concentration gradient. Facilitated diffusion releases energy because the solute moves from where it is more concentrated to where it is less concentrated. The picture shows an example of facilitated diffusion. Hydrogen ions moves across the membrane and down their concentration gradient through a transport protein. The protein uses potential energy in the concentration gradient in order to produce ATP.